Okay, happy afternoon, yogis. So, today I'm going to talk about back bending. Um, it, I'll teach some sequences in a bit, but there's a lot of confusion around how to develop a back bend and how to practice it. So, the main limiting factor for people in a back bend is the tightness in their shoulders, okay? So when you try to do full wheel, this is the one people want to do. They want to do full wheel, hands on the ground, lift hips up, bend the back. If the shoulders are tight, the first thing you'll see is that the elbows will be bent in this position, okay? And when the elbows bend, it doesn't feel good and the pose is kind of ineffective. Second, the weight, because the spine can't go into an arch, the weight will begin to migrate. Instead of moving towards the thoracic spine, it'll start to go towards the lumbar, and usually around one of the vertebrae, usually the fourth vertebrae in the lumbar spine, it will begin to kind of fold in a not useful way, and this will create compression on the disc. So we always want to avoid compression in back bending. So the issue of how to get good back bends is not really one of doing full wheel and full wheel and full wheel again, because if your shoulders are really tight, you doing this full wheel pose, you won't even begin to create any opening in the shoulders. What you'll do instead is take all of the force of tightness directly towards the lumbar spine and the inside of the knee. Okay, so the feet will tend to turn out and it'll strain the inside of the knee. And then when you go to come out of the pose, you'll move towards your feet, further straining the knee and collapsing the arches. So what this does is, by trying to do the full wheel, you keep creating compression throughout your body. So when we take a therapeutic approach to asana, what we begin to do is break down the pose into what is the missing factor that we need to develop. So the first thing to get any kind of backbending practice is you have to open your shoulders. But if you look at how most people are practicing yoga, you see I see basically no shoulder opening asanas. Okay, so in a regular power vinyasa class, there's not one shoulder opening asana. And this thing where you interlace your hands behind the back and fold forward, let's be honest, you're not really getting much leverage against the shoulder, and it's only opening it in a direction that's not going to help in a back bend. So then it's well, what do we do? You have to begin to add shoulder opening asanas to your practice sequence. So the main one is a pose called anahatasana. And anahatasana, you can do this on the wall, but if you're on your mat and you're doing a vinyasa practice, just put your knees on the mat and extend your arms out in front of you. Begin sliding forward. If your neck feels kind of funky, you can place the forehead on the mat. But if the neck is fine, then you're actually going to slide forward until you touch the chin onto the mat and try to bring the front of the top of the heart. Okay, so this top front part of the chest, you try to bring this onto the ground. And if it doesn't go, you actually slide forward just a little bit more and keep pressing your arms straight. So if your shoulders are tight, the elbow will tend to bend a little bit. You have to kind of fight this. Yeah, and the first couple of times you do anahatasana, it's not going to be comfortable. And you might even feel tingling, numb sensation. Your shoulders are they'll start singing you a song, yeah? And when this song starts to occur, you embrace it. And you sit in your uncomfortability. I'm not saying to hurt yourself or to force or to bounce or to strain your neck. I'm saying find that edge and stay there. 10 breaths, 15 breaths, and then just slide forward onto your belly into Sphinx pose and rest, okay? Other shoulder opening asanas. There's one where you extend the arm, so you're laying on your belly. You extend your right arm out to the right. And you want to raise the hand and the extended arm to the height of your eyes, so it begins to create just a slight diagonal angle. And then from this position, you begin to roll onto first your side, and then you rotate a little bit further until the sacrum is on the ground and you bend your knees up. Now, I will make a video showing these asanas, but I want to talk a bit about it. So you do this on each side for about 10 breaths. This begins to stretch the shoulder in this direction. Then we also have asanas where you stretch in this direction, and asanas where you're actually folding the arm underneath and placing your body weight on it. You have to practice all of these asanas to open the shoulder a couple of months. Yeah, this is better than trying to do a full wheel, okay? Now, half of full wheel is anahatasana. So the arms have to be straight, you're bending back. It's what's happening in the upper part of the body. The other half is what's happening in the lower body. So the poses that you practice for this are camel pose. There's a version of dancer pose where instead of opening the femur bone out, you're actually hugging it to center line and you're working with a strap. So it's a very neutral position for the spine. It's just a full back bend. This version also helps because you have to essentially learn to stretch the muscles of the quadricep, while hugging the knees towards center line so that your knees are not coming apart, which creates a diagonal of the femur bones and again directs force into the lumbar spine. So we have to train both halves of the back bend separately. If you keep doing full wheel, it's like it's too much at once, and you have to kind of bit by bit kind of negotiate a change with the body, okay? And then once you have practiced these for enough time, and I'm talking at least a couple of months, like don't be in a hurry. Once you practice these, and the way to do your full wheel, the best way is to actually bind your femur bones parallel using a strap and placing a block in the middle. So you have to look at your bones and say, okay, are they slightly angled out? Are they completely parallel? And literally create that boundary, because the moment that you go up, if you've opened your shoulders enough, okay, then you'll be able to push with your feet, kind of moving the back band into the thoracic spine. And this question of what do I do with my pelvis? Do I tuck it? Do I arch it? It begins to resolve itself if you just keep the femur bones in neutral. You'll start to create this beautiful foundation for the spine to decompress and actually elongate towards the hands. Now, this takes some practice. And actually learning to do back bending, you can't just, you can't expect to, if you're only doing a yoga class that's an hour and 15, an hour and a half, normally there's just like a little bit of back bending at the very end of the class. You can't expect for this to be enough because it's not enough to make a change. So you have to do a sequence that's about a half hour in your daily practice that's just focusing on back bends, all kinds of back bends, and then you have to decompress the opposite direction of mobility. So all of this stuff we kind of teach in a sequence designing course where you're working with the 8 different directions of mobility of the spine and what to do with the supporting limbs. But the best advice I can give to you, if you want to get really good at back bending, is to train both half of the bodies separately. So you train what's happening in the upper body, the impulse of the shoulders onto the upper spine and the neck, and the impulse of the legs onto the lumbar spine and creating a stable foundation. If you train these two things separately, you spend some time diligently doing this, then you bring them together in your full wheel, and it's a wonderful thing. This like full wheel back bend, it's not suffering. You actually feel like a beautiful opening. The shoulders open more, and you're able to push with the feet to shift the weight, so you're really opening more of the area, the rib cage, the thoracic spine, this whole upper region, instead of feeling that you're creating like an angle like this in the lumbar spine, which compresses the vertebrae. We want to avoid this. So I could talk about back bending for a couple of hours, but if you practice those poses, you'll get there. If you only do, if your idea of a back bend is just doing kind of cobra or upward dog, these are a back bend, but they don't do anything to change what's happening in the story of the shoulders. Yeah, so better if you're doing like sequence design or your sequencing is, instead of bringing your students or yourself into a lot of cobras and upward dog, which most people are not doing correctly anyways, and they tend to be like scrunching shoulders up, compressing wrists because the fingers are not in the right position. Better is to have people do anahatasana, because this pose begins to open the shoulders, and it sucks. Honestly, the first couple of weeks you do it, it's really intense, but it only sucks while you're in it. When you come out of the pose, it's like an ecstasy, because you really change something that's binding you, and binding you in a way that creates this as opposed to this. So if you're always just doing upward dog and cobra, there's no stretch in the shoulders. Yeah? And as well, I don't see a lot of like camel poses being offered in class anymore. We need to have these alternative backbending asanas that are more than just cobra and upward dog. If you have a chance to come and practice with me, if you ever do, just request backbending sequences and I will put in all of this. I'm happy to help. And as part of this 21-day teaching challenge, I will make a sequence, actually practice and show you some of this. But when I'm doing the sequence, I can't describe it in this detail. So if I'm teaching and if I'm demonstrating with my body, I can't explain things like I'm explaining now. So I hope that this is a helpful thing and that it makes a little bit of sense and you can apply it to your personal practice. Okay, well, I'm trying to keep these videos short and I don't know how good I'm doing. So we're at 11 and a half minutes. Namaste. Have a great night.